The Maine morning traffic meltdown that made a Dunkin Donuts a matter of law. There is a certain kind of problem that only a New England town can have. The type of everyday dilemma that would perplex outsiders but makes perfect sense to anyone raised on frostbite, flannel and a steady diet of Dunkin' iced coffee. And the town of South Berwick, Maine, encountered one such problem. Simple on its surface, yet profound in its implications. People were parking in front of the Dunkin Donuts. Constantly, wildly, disastrously. This wasn't a matter of simple inconvenience. No. This was a municipal crisis worthy of official action. And so, in the annals of American local governance, tucked among ordinances about zoning setbacks and dog licensing, you will indeed find one of the most gloriously practical, delightfully ordinary, and completely real laws ever passed. South Berwick, Maine, prohibited parking in front of its Dunkin Donuts. Not as a joke, not as folklore, not as a rumour in a Reddit thread, but as an actual ordinance legally approved by an actual town council because people were actually turning a major street into an accidental coffee-only drive lane. To truly appreciate how this came to be, you must picture the geography of South Berwick. Nestled along the southern edge of the state, it's a peaceful community where the seasons hit hard, the accents hit harder, and Dunkin Donuts plays a role in daily life that borders on infrastructural necessity. Mainers drink Dunkin even when the thermometer looks like it's giving up on life. They drink iced Dunkin in February. They drink hot Dunkin in July, but only if the iced machine is broken. Therefore, when the town's Dunkin became so popular that customers began treating the front of the building like a personal parking space, the situation escalated fast. Not theoretically, not humorously, literally. The Dunkin in question sat near a main street, and its design, like many early Dunkin buildings, did not anticipate the level of coffee devotion that modern New Englanders would one day achieve. The drive-through funneled cars into a tight loop. The parking lot was limited, and Mainers, being practical people accustomed to solving problems the fastest way possible, concluded, "The closest place to leave my car is that spot right in front by the road." Perfect. Except it wasn't perfect. It was a traffic catastrophe. Residents began complaining to the town. Cars were stopping right at the curb in front of the Dunkin, blocking the lane. Sometimes a single vehicle brought traffic to a complete standstill. Sometimes it took multiple cars. And sometimes, according to witness accounts, it was as if the entire town had silently agreed to turn that stretch of road into an unofficial pop-up parking lot while grabbing coffee. Delivery trucks struggled to get through. School buses were delayed. People trying to commute found themselves trapped behind cars that weren't incorrectly parked so much as they were spiritually parked. Vehicles briefly abandoned while their owners rushed inside to obtain the one elixir capable of sustaining a Mainer through the workday. And so the complaints rolled in. Residents called the town office saying someone parked their truck in front of Dunkin and nobody could drive past for 10 minutes. A business owner nearby reported, "Customers are leaving their cars in the lane. They're stopping traffic. I saw a guy just leave it running and jog inside like he was going to get a kidney transplant." Parents explained that the school drop-off routine was turning into a caffeinated gridlock every morning. One mother said, "It's like bumper cars out there, but everyone's holding coffee." It was clear the Dunkin situation was unsustainable. Therefore, the South Berwick Town Council did what New England town councils have done since time immemorial. They scheduled a meeting. And this wasn't the kind of meeting where 3 people show up to discuss whether the library should buy a new carpet cleaner. This was a meeting about Dunkin Donuts traffic. This was important. People attended. People spoke passionately. People had opinions rooted in years of caffeine dependency and civic pride. The police department submitted reports documenting the issue. Near-miss accidents, stalled lanes, incidents where officers had to ask drivers to move along, only to hear, "I'll be right out, just grabbing my order." More than one officer observed that the Dunkin morning rush was harder to control than parade traffic. Residents shared stories. One man said he nearly got rear-ended because a line of cars stopped unexpectedly in front of the Dunkin. Not the drive-through, not the lot, but the literal lane of travel. Another said he once saw someone park sideways as if performing a modern art installation. A town councillor reportedly said, "We can't keep pretending this isn't a problem just because everyone loves Dunkin." A resident replied, "Exactly, and because everyone loves Dunkin, we do need to fix it." And so the ordinance was drafted. There was no drama, no controversy, no protest. The town simply acknowledged the reality. The front curb of Dunkin Donuts was not a parking spot, no matter how deeply the coffee-seeking instinct tried to convince people otherwise. Thus, the official rule was created. You could not park there. Period. Once passed, the ordinance did exactly what it was supposed to do. Officers could now ticket people who blocked the street. Drivers learned to use the actual parking lot instead of treating the road like a personal driveway. Traffic flow improved. Delivery trucks stopped having emotional breakdowns while attempting to pass. The school buses resumed their normal schedule. The law became known locally as another example of small-town practicality. It was not passed for humour. It was not written to be quirky. It was simply a solution to a real problem. But then, something funny happened. In the era of the internet, local laws with funny wording or unusual origins rise to viral status like wild mushrooms after a rainstorm. And thus, South Berwick's Dunkin ordinance eventually found itself on 1,000 weird laws in every state lists. Unlike many so-called weird laws that are completely fabricated or long repealed, this one was and is very real. The ordinance existed in the town code. It was enforced. It still gets referenced today. And when the world discovered it, the legend spread. Articles online framed it as, "You can't park in front of Dunkin Donuts in Maine," which is technically true, specifically in South Berwick. Memes popped up. TikTokers discussed it with fascination. And New Englanders nodded understandingly and said, "Yeah, that checks out." Because if you ask anyone in New England whether they believe a Dunkin Donuts could create enough traffic chaos to justify legislation, they will say, "Absolutely. I'm surprised it only happened in one town." That is the magic of this law. It's funny, it's charming, but it's also real, and it reflects something deeply New England at its core. When things get out of hand, you solve them simply, directly, practically, even if the solution becomes a national talking point. Dozens of people across the country genuinely believe the ordinance must be a joke because of how oddly specific it is. But the people of South Berwick understand exactly why it exists. They lived the traffic jam. They saw the blocked lanes. They experienced the Dunkin chaos firsthand. To them, this was not a novelty. It was a necessity. The ordinance made life smoother. It made the morning commute less unpredictable. And it allowed the town to enjoy its Dunkin Donuts in peace without fear of a vehicle lurking in the roadway like an abandoned shopping cart. So yes, this is a whimsical story. It is a funny one, but it is told with respect for the truth. The Dunkin parking ordinance is real, practical and emblematic of the unique way a small Maine town handled a very modern, very caffeinated problem. And that is where our tale truly begins. A town, a Dunkin, a street in front of it, and a law born not from myth, not from legend, but from everyday Mainers trying to get their coffee without causing a vehicular apocalypse. The rise of the Dunkin congestion crisis. South Berwick, Maine, in the early 1990s, was not a place where one expected civil disorder, public fury, vehicular warfare, or caffeinated gridlock. It was a peaceful, modest, tightly knit community. The kind of place where people waved from their cars, where kids rode bikes without fear, and where everyone knew whether everyone else preferred glazed, jelly or chocolate-frosted donuts. But then came Dunkin. The Dunkin Donuts on Portland Street did not simply open. It arrived like a caffeinated comet, scattering coffee cups and paper napkins through the local atmosphere. And South Berwick, unsuspecting and unprepared, found itself dealing with a new, potent and entirely underestimated force of nature. The morning rush. The Dunkin parking lot was small, too small, minuscule. A parking lot you could describe, if being generous, as symbolic. And as the number of devoted caffeine soldiers increased, the little lot hit its limit and began pushing overflow into the street. And that's when the problem began. The sidewalk parliament and the morning commotion. By 7:15 a.m. most weekdays, the Dunkin Plaza had become something like a local version of a congressional session, except with more coffee, fewer ties, and significantly more yelling through car windows. Cars rolled in from all angles. Minivans, pickup trucks, compact sedans, and on one particularly memorable day, a tractor whose owner adamantly insisted he had every right to order a medium-iced regular like anyone else. Parking spots filled instantly. The drive-through line overflowed. The main street clogged like a straw packed with munchkins. And so began the daily drama witnessed by school children waiting for the bus, elderly residents walking their morning laps, and shop owners who just wanted a peaceful start to their day without being serenaded by 15 simultaneous horn blasts at 8 a.m. The problem was not Dunkin. The problem was not coffee. The problem was where people were leaving their cars. In front of the shop, directly on Portland Street, blocking lanes, blocking visibility, and occasionally blocking each other so badly that both drivers had to get out, face each other in the street, and interrogate reality. The police department reaches their limit. South Berwick's police force is not, and never has been, a battalion-sized organisation. It was then, as it remains now, a compact, efficient group accustomed to the calm pace of local life. Their usual challenges included the occasional lost dog, a report of suspicious teenagers eating pizza behind the library, handling the 4th of July parade lineup. What they were not accustomed to was the morning Dunkin situation. Every day, officers were dispatched to the Portland Street chaos zone. Every morning, they would arrive with the solemn patience of individuals who knew they were about to repeat the same sequence of events. Ask drivers to move their cars. Hear protests involving the words, "just grabbing something real quick." Watch a driver try to perform a 3-point turn that evolved into a 12-point existential crisis. Issue warnings which everyone ignored the next day. The police logs at the time probably read like a novella written by someone who had lived too long inside a coffee-scented hurricane. And finally, after weeks, months, and possibly even years of this, the police department collectively concluded the following: something has to be done. The town hall debate. If you have never witnessed a small-town New England public meeting, then you have never witnessed democracy at its purest blend of passion, procedure, and passionate procedural argument. When the proposal to create an official no parking zone in front of Dunkin Donuts hit the docket, the people of South Berwick responded as though the matter involved national security. Residents packed the chairs. Some stood in the back. A small group sat on folding seats they brought from home because they fully anticipated a long debate. And they were right. The issue was clear. Portland Street was too narrow for stopped cars. Visibility was dangerously reduced. School buses were being delayed by late-stage coffee cravings. Delivery trucks were swerving like caffeinated ballerinas. But, as with all things concerning Dunkin in New England, there were two kinds of people. Those who believed in order and those who believed their need for coffee trumped all earthly laws. One resident insisted the town simply needed bigger roads. Another suggested strategic parallel parking lessons. Another claimed, with absolute seriousness, that parking in front is a part of the Dunkin experience. But for every coffee defender, there were three people who simply wanted the ability to turn onto the street without risking fender-to-fender combat. Town officials proposed the rule: no parking on Portland Street directly in front of the Dunkin Donuts. Some called it extreme. Some called it necessary. Some asked if the police truly had the resources to enforce it. Then one council member, known for being pragmatic to a heroic degree, stated plainly, "We enforce it every day already. All this does is make it official." And after hours of debate, longer than debates about taxes, school budgets and zoning combined, the vote was taken. The ordinance passed. South Berwick exhaled. The aftermath and the adjustment. Once the no parking zone went into effect, something extraordinary happened. The chaos began to ease. People adjusted. Drivers learned new habits. The morning gridlock, while still undeniably lively in a New England coffee sense, became survivable. Visitors, unaware of the rule, were corrected by locals who took personal pride in upholding the law. Police officers no longer had to perform daily Dunkin diplomatic interventions. In short, the system worked. It became a normal, accepted and respected part of South Berwick life. The sign remained. Residents obeyed it. And the town's mornings gained just a little more peace, though never entirely, because no town with a Dunkin can fully escape the gravitational pull of early rising caffeine hunters. But at the heart of the change was the simple truth. People loved their coffee, and the town loved its safety. The law was not born from quirkiness. It became quirky after the fact. To locals, it was practical. To the internet, decades later, it would become iconic. The era of enforcement, adaptation, and mild New England drama. Once the South Berwick Town Council officially passed the no parking in front of Dunkin Donuts ordinance, something shifted in the cosmic fabric of Portland Street. The sign went up. The ordinance was logged. The ink dried, and the residents, at least most of them, began adjusting to the new Dunkin reality. But as anyone from Maine will tell you, change, even small change, arrives in New England the way spring does. Slowly, reluctantly, and with at least 3 unexpected snowstorms in the middle. And so began the next chapter of the Dunkin parking saga. The era of enforcement. The sign that started it all. The sign that South Berwick installed was not flashy. It did not glow. It did not wave its arms to attract your attention. It was standard issue, metal, practical, and utterly unamused by excuses. It simply said, "No parking right there," plain as day. Anyone with functioning eyeballs could read it. Anyone without functioning eyeballs probably wasn't driving anyway. Yet somehow, a significant percentage of people treated the sign the same way many treat the "do not microwave" warnings on metallic takeout containers, as a polite suggestion that did not apply to them personally. The first wave of offenders. Within days, the South Berwick Police Department had their first post-ordinance encounter with the bold, the brave, and the breakfast sandwich obsessed. Some drivers respected the new rule immediately, others did not, and the ones who didn't had a remarkable variety of explanations. One claimed, "I thought it meant no parking for other people." Another insisted they were still technically moving, even though their car was parked, engine off, driver's door open, and their hands were holding a bag of assorted munchkins. One person declared, "I only stopped for a minute," to which the officer gently replied, "That's exactly what everybody else has been saying for 2 years." But the officers weren't angry. They weren't out for vengeance. They simply wanted the street to remain passable, the visibility to remain functional, and the daily commute to stop resembling a demolition derby with coffee cups. The morning regulars adapt. Among the residents, a distinct subculture developed. The Dunkin morning regulars, long-time veterans of the caffeinated battleground. These individuals had established routines more precise than military drills. Arrive between 7:02 and 7:06 a.m. Order the same thing every day. Exchange one joke with the staff member they knew by name. Leave within minutes. They had never previously needed to consider where to park. It had simply been wherever your car fit without blocking a moving object. Now, with the ordinance in place, they needed new tactics. Some favoured the Dunkin lot, tight but workable. Some opted for legal side street parking. Some preferred the post office lot across the street, provided they were actual post office customers at least once a week, a requirement enforced with severe granite-jawed New England dedication. Some walked from home if they lived close enough, turning the morning coffee run into a daily pilgrimage. And a few, the brave few, became drive-through purists, abandoning parking altogether in favour of the serpentine line that wound around the building like a caffeinated conga. This adaptation wasn't instantaneous, but slowly, steadily, South Berwick found its rhythm again. The great "but I wasn't parking" movement. No saga of public regulation is complete without a faction of residents who interpret rules with philosophical creativity. Thus emerged the movement we now lovingly refer to as "I wasn't parking, I was stopping." These drivers believed they had identified a loophole so powerful that it would collapse the entire legal system if acknowledged. "I'm not parking, officer, I'm just waiting," one said, sitting motionless in a spot, engine idling, staring into the middle distance. "I'm not parking, I'm paused," another insisted. "It's only illegal if I turn the engine off," said a third, who looked deeply betrayed when informed he was still in violation. And then there was the man who argued that because he left his blinker on, he was technically in the process of turning, even though he was holding a large iced coffee and breakfast sandwich and appeared to be turning only in a spiritual sense. The officers handled these encounters with the patient exhaustion found only in people who deal with the public before the public has had its morning coffee. Businesses nearby react. Interestingly, the ordinance did more than clear the street. It changed the way nearby businesses experienced the morning rush. A bakery down the road saw increased walk-in traffic, people parking legally and realizing they might as well grab a pastry on their way. A small gift shop discovered that the Dunkin overflow walkers occasionally wandered inside, still holding their coffee, still half asleep, but curious enough to buy a candle. A hardware store owner, interviewed years later, said, "Once people had to park legally, they had to walk by my shop. Some of them realized, hey, I do need nails today." Dunkin customers bought more nails in 1996 than ever before. The ordinance had unintentionally sparked a microeconomy of sleepy, caffeinated impulse buying. The road becomes safer, quieter, and slightly less chaotic. Perhaps the most measurable impact was safety. With no cars blocking sidelines, drivers could see oncoming traffic again. School bus routes ran more smoothly. Delivery trucks no longer had to make evasive maneuvers worthy of an Olympic slalom event. Even pedestrians felt more relaxed walking the sidewalk, no longer forced to weave around car bumpers sticking out like unpredictable metallic noses. South Berwick did not revert to perfect calm. No street with a Dunkin ever truly does, but it found a stable middle ground, busy, lively and caffeinated, but functional. The change became normal, then expected, then simply part of local life. The law settles into legend. Over the next few years, something curious happened. The law, created for practical safety reasons, quietly transformed into a local identity marker. South Berwick residents mentioned it with pride. Visitors heard about it and laughed. Newspapers occasionally highlighted it in strange laws columns. And as the internet grew, the ordinance began its second life. A tiny local safety measure became a national oddity. People outside Maine assumed it was quirky and unnecessary. People inside Maine knew it had saved the town from caffeinated gridlock. And that contrast, perception versus reality, is what gave the law its charm. Not fantasy, not myth, just a very real rule born from very real morning chaos that deserved, and still deserves, a place in New England legend. The cultural ripple effect of a no parking sign. By the late 1990s, the no parking in front of Dunkin Donuts ordinance had woven itself so deeply into the daily life of South Berwick that people barely remembered the time before it. The era of free-range parking, adrenaline-fueled morning gridlock and vehicular choreography on Portland Street. Yet the passage of a single municipal rule, humble though it seemed, had a ripple effect that spread throughout the community like the aroma of freshly baked donuts in the early hours. This wasn't just about traffic discipline anymore. It was about identity. It was about pride. It was about the subtle New England belief that if you don't enforce order around coffee, civilization itself starts to wobble. The sign becomes a landmark. Before the ordinance, the South Berwick Dunkin was just another Dunkin, the beating heart of morning commute culture, sure, but otherwise unremarkable in appearance. But after the sign went up, something changed. It became a landmark, not a grandiose one like a clock tower or a historic courthouse. No, this was a practical New England landmark, the kind locals reference when giving directions. Go past the Dunkin. You'll see the no parking sign. If you hit the hill, you've gone too far. Visitors had photographs taken beside it. Teenagers used it as a meeting spot. One elderly resident jokingly referred to it as our Statue of Liberty, except with fewer tourists and more coffee. Even the post office clerks began using it conversationally. Your package wasn't delivered because the truck couldn't stop out front. No parking in front of Dunkin, you know. It was uttered with a wink, but also not entirely joking. Caffeine loyalists and their new rituals. Over time, Dunkin's most loyal customers, the ones whose veins practically pulsed with medium-iced regulars, developed new systems for navigating the morning rush. Parking strategists emerged. Maps were drawn. Mental calculations were made every morning based on time of day, amount of traffic, drive-through line length, weather conditions, whether that one person in the silver SUV, everyone in town knew who, was likely to be there and clog the lot. Some residents had such mastery of the Dunkin landscape that they could enter and exit the parking lot without ever stopping or reversing, a feat spoken of with reverence, like a local athletic accomplishment. One man was rumoured to have perfected what locals called the sweeping swing, a parking manoeuvre so smooth and continuous that it allowed him to park, pick up his order and leave without ever performing a full stop. No one ever confirmed this with footage, but eyewitness accounts persisted, lending it the credibility of small-town legend. The town's relationship with Dunkin evolves. As the ordinance settled into permanence, something unexpected happened. Dunkin and the town began to operate in sync. The shop adapted, the customers adapted, the road adapted, the police adapted, and the town, once frustrated by morning chaos, came to regard their Dunkin with affection, even the ones who didn't drink coffee. It wasn't just a franchise anymore. It was a piece of the local ecosystem. Town leaders spoke about Dunkin with amusement, shaking their heads while acknowledging that no other business had ever commanded this level of municipal involvement. Police joked about the Dunkin beat. Residents compared morning wait times like fishermen comparing catch sizes. High schoolers treated the parking lot like a study in traffic sociology. For all its simplicity, the ordinance had created something unexpectedly valuable. A community moment shared every morning as the town collectively navigated the gentle chaos of caffeine culture. The outsider reaction, confusion and amusement. As South Berwick lived comfortably with the ordinance, outsiders began discovering the law. News articles listed it under weird New England laws. Radio hosts chuckled about it. Online lists titled Strangest Laws in America mentioned it with amused disbelief. But here's where the story gets interesting. To South Berwick residents, the ordinance wasn't weird. It was logical, practical, necessary. When out-of-towners asked, "Wait, seriously? You can't park in front of Dunkin Donuts?" Locals responded with the gentle, patient tone used when explaining gravity to a toddler. "Yes, because of course you can't." And then the resident would launch into a detailed explanation of visibility angles, traffic flow science, and the very real danger of trying to turn onto Portland Street while someone else was parked in a spot that should never under any conditions contain a stationary object. Outsiders found the law funny. Residents found the outsiders funny for finding it funny. The dawn of Dunkin etiquette. One of the more unusual cultural developments sparked by the ordinance was the rise of what locals came to call Dunkin etiquette. You see, inside every New England town, there is an unspoken shared understanding of how best to move through the world with coffee in hand. But in South Berwick, this etiquette became unusually refined due to the pressure cooker environment of the no parking zone. Rules emerged, unofficial yet widely followed. Never block the drive-through exit. There are consequences. Never assume the car with its blinker on is actually turning. Never attempt a left turn during peak morning hours unless you have accepted the possibility of eternal delay. Always acknowledge the person who holds the door open for you if you're carrying multiple coffees. Always. If someone lets you merge, offer a polite nod, the highest honour in New England driving culture. Though unwritten, these norms became part of the town's shared wisdom. Teenagers learned it from their parents. New residents learned it by observing. Visitors learned it the hard way. A new generation, same rule. As years passed, children who once sat in the back seat watching the morning Dunkin chaos grew old enough to drive through the very same scene themselves. They had heard their parents' stories, the legendary parking disasters of the pre-ordinance days, and often treated them like exaggerated tales from ancient times. It couldn't have been that bad, they thought. But then they drove on Portland Street at 7:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, and they understood instantly. The ordinance still mattered. It had not lost relevance. It was not a relic. It was the quiet guardian of functional morning traffic. Generations changed, cars changed, coffee orders evolved from regulars to macchiatos to cold brews to oat milk lattes. But the law remained the calm centre of the Dunkin universe. The town accepts its reputation. Eventually, South Berwick became not just the home of the no parking Dunkin ordinance, but the town that embraced it. Locals laughed with reporters instead of at them. The police joked about starting a parking in front of Dunkin's support group. Residents took pride in the oddly specific nature of the law, viewing it as an emblem of the town's character. Practical, grounded, slightly quirky, and absolutely devoted to morning coffee order. South Berwick didn't resent the attention. It enjoyed the notoriety. And it didn't feel embarrassed that its most famous law involved donuts and traffic. Because the law wasn't silly. It had solved a real problem. And the town was all the better for it. The modern era. A law endures, a town evolves, and Dunkin reigns eternal. As the decades rolled forward, South Berwick grew, changed and adapted, but the no parking in front of Dunkin Donuts ordinance remained as solid and immovable as a New England stone wall. It stood firm through cultural shifts, economic changes, new generations, and even Dunkin's gradual evolution from Dunkin Donuts to simply Dunkin. Some laws fade from memory, some laws gather dust, some laws exist only as footnotes in old municipal code books. But this law, this one, lives on because it was born from necessity, shaped by community and polished by time into local legend. And in the modern era, its significance is clearer than ever. The modern Dunkin landscape. In present-day South Berwick, Dunkin remains exactly what it has always been. A lifeline, a ritual, a non-negotiable element of the morning routine. The customers have changed, of course. Now there are mobile orders, curbside pickups, espresso shots, cold foams, flavour swirls, oat milk substitutions, and the all-powerful order-ahead queue. Yet, no matter how technologically evolved the system becomes, no matter how streamlined the experience, the essential truth remains. People still need their Dunkin, and they still need a place to park that does not block Portland Street. The ordinance could not be more relevant. In fact, if the town were to remove it today, morning traffic would likely collapse into chaos faster than a donut melting in hot coffee. The sign still stands. Walk or drive past the Dunkin today, and you'll see it. The same no parking sign, standing like a loyal guardian, overseeing the morning rush with stoic dignity. Locals barely notice it, which, ironically, is the greatest compliment a sign can receive. It means the town has internalized the rule so deeply that it has become second nature. Visitors, on the other hand, still do double takes. Wait, you really can't park here? And locals respond with a shrug and a smile. Yup, been that way for decades. There is a certain comfort in consistency, especially in New England, where traditions are treated like heirlooms and municipal rules are respected with the reverence of ancient runes. The sign is not decorative. It's not quirky. It's not ornamental. It is functional history. The law in the modern code. Yes, the ordinance is still in the books. Not as an outdated curiosity, but as an active, enforceable rule. Anyone browsing the town's traffic ordinances, usually students doing civics projects or internet bloggers searching for weird laws, can still find it, nestled among more conventional regulations about crosswalks, intersections and school zones. Its presence is both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary because it is a practical rule addressing a real need. Extraordinary because it has become more famous than rules 10 times more important. Few parking ordinances in America can claim such a legacy. The officers of today know the story. South Berwick's police officers, newer recruits and long-serving veterans alike, are custodians of this unique piece of town history. They know the stories. They've heard the tales of past chaos. They understand the necessity of the rule. And so, when someone from out of town pulls up and innocently asks, "Can't I just park here for a second?" The officers explain the ordinance with a professionalism seasoned by decades of tradition, and maybe, just maybe, with the faintest hint of amusement. Because they know this rule is part of the town's cultural DNA, the college students and the town's growing reputation. Every year, students and newcomers discover the law online. They show up in South Berwick with curiosity. Some even take selfies with the sign, just to document that yes, this really exists, and yes, the town really enforces it. Local teens roll their eyes. Yeah, we know. Adults laugh. Tourists wander around looking for the perfect picture angle. What began as a practical safety regulation has now entered the broader cultural sphere. A meme, a trivia snippet, a listicle favourite, a conversation starter at parties. And South Berwick is wonderfully, blissfully unbothered. The town does not feel mocked. It is not embarrassed. It does not feel the need to defend itself. If anything, residents appear quietly pleased that among all the strange laws in America, theirs is one of the few that actually makes perfect sense. The modern morning ritual. Despite all the attention, the most remarkable thing about the ordinance's legacy is how utterly normal it feels to the people who live there. Every morning, cars flow in and out of the Dunkin parking lot like they have for decades. The drive-through moves with the determination of a small but mighty army. Pedestrians stroll by with iced coffees in hand. And Portland Street remains open, clear and safe because no one parks where they shouldn't. This is the quiet success of the ordinance. No drama, no chaos, no gridlock Armageddon. Just a town that learned from experience, made a rule and stuck by it. The ordinance as legacy. What gives the South Berwick Dunkin rule its lasting charm is not that it's strange, but that it is strangely specific, the kind of detail that whispers, "There is a story here." And indeed there is. A story of community, a story of practical governance, a story of how a simple parking problem became a permanent part of local law. People often joke that the law belongs in a museum. Some suggest it should be printed on T-shirts. A few argue that the town should hold an annual Dunkin Parking Appreciation Day. But the real tribute to the law is the fact that it has endured. It is living, breathing heritage. A town built on stories and coffee. Today, South Berwick stands as a testament to the idea that small towns can have big legends, and that sometimes those legends are written not in marble, but in municipal codes. The Dunkin Ordinance is not just a rule. It is a story passed down, laughed about, remembered and respected. The town does not need statues or plaques to commemorate its history. It has something better. A bright, simple, humble, no parking sign that tells the whole tale, if you know how to listen. And in that way, the saga continues. Every morning, every commuter, every coffee run, every time a visitor pauses to ask, "Seriously?" Yes, seriously. Because in South Berwick, Maine, the one unshakable truth of modern life is this: you can get your coffee, you can get your donuts, but you absolutely, positively cannot park in front of Dunkin Donuts.